And so today, listen, guys, I know it's been a month since I've posted up, but I'm back around, and this time I'm going to promise to stay consistent. Guys, what's going on? Today is your boy Lawrence Gears, Black Diamond. Like, comment, and subscribe. And today we're going to be looking at the backlash of what Chuck Schumer did in Congress. In and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. So it did that. It did that in my crib too. Except for the only problem was I was in the house. So only problem we had is that we had that cheap internet with 1 gigabyte and all that goofy stuff. So yeah. So that's why I'm kind of like used to it. Cause when we was over there, we had a cheap internet plan. So the main one we can afford, $40 a month. And I was like 2 gigabytes or whatever. And she on it. She on it too. Right. So as I was saying, guys, we're back at it one more time. And now, as I said before, we're not getting on the backlash of what Chuck Schumer did in Congress. So, for those of you who don't know what happened, pretty much Chuck Schumer, and this is something that everybody knew that this was going to happen. Chuck Schumer did all this hooping and hollering against Trump just to turn around and side with Trump on the spending bill. So Chuck Schumer, TDS syndrome Democrat, decided he wanted to side with the Republicans in order to avert a shutdown. So let's watch the backlash of that.
Leadership from his own party, and here to tell us why he did it is Chuck Schumer.
Thank you.
He's also the author of the new book, Anti anti-Semitism in America, a warning. Please welcome Senator Tucker.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just gonna throw it out there. Why?
Great.
What were you thinking and why?
Okay. So look, I knew it was a difficult choice, and I knew that I'd get a lot of criticism. For my choice, but I felt as a leader I had to do it. Here's why. The CR bill was bad, no question, and it allowed a slush fund, which allowed money to be pushed around.
Explain it for
The government spending,
right.
a shutdown. The alternative is cut off the government spending, and here's what would happen if we cut off government spending. It would be devastation like we have never seen.
Worse than we're seeing now?
Much. Here's why.
So apparently, this is the one thing that they love to do. They call this spending bill a slush fund. I would like for every last one of you guys to go look up this CR bill. Democrats kept passing through the last 4 years that they've been in political power. The numbers and everything are the same. If you go research for it and you compare it to what Joe Biden and the CR bills that Joe Biden had, it's the numbers are the same and everything. But now it's all of a sudden being considered a slush fund because Democrats are not the ones in power. That's why they're calling it a slush fund.
That's why I did it. I wasn't going to take this flack just for having a lot of fun. The bottom line is a government shutdown works like this. All government spending is stopped, all. And then the executive branch, Trump, Musk, Doge, and this really evil man people don't know about, Vote, who's head of OMB. His name is Vote.
What's
Would
OMB?
have
What is
so-
OMB then?
OMB is the Office of Management Budget, which
Thank you.
determines the spending. And they could cut off anything they want simply by saying it's not essential. So, day 2, SNAP, food for poor kids, not essential. Day 4, mass transit, New York City subway and subways all over, not essential. Day 7, Medicaid, not essential. People don't need Medicaid. They should get their own health care. And this would happen over and over and over again. And there's no check. The biggest problem is that it has been determined that the courts have no say.
Yeah.
And the only say is the executive branch. Now, in the old days, when there was a shutdown, they'd work it out. But this is a different, horrible kettle of fish.
Mm-hmm.
They hate the government. They want to shut down everything. You heard what Musk said, $2 trillion. And so this would have been so devastating. And here's the second part that's maybe just as bad. There's no exit strategy. How do you get out of a shutdown? Guess who determines it? Trump, Musk, Doge. They're the only ones. And one of the Republican senators told one of the Democratic senators, you get in this, we're staying in for 6 months, 9 months, a year till we decimate the entire federal
Can I do
government.
a follow-up question
Yes.
quickly?
So wait,
Go
it
ahead.
was so bad that I felt I had to do this. Now, it's not happening immediately, but what does a leader do? When you're a leader, if you see a real crisis a little bit down the road, your job is to stand up and say, we cannot do that.
Senator,
And that's what I did.
you mentioned, this is what a leader does. And we were just talking in our last segment about we aren't seeing a clear leader of the party, because even though I agree with you with your decision and I see why, but you were only able to get 9 Democrats to go with you. How is that leadership?
Why?
Okay. Look, the bottom line is there were a whole lot of Democrats who were torn, and they on the one hand, people were clamoring, do something now, do something now. Now, do we have to act, and do we have to fight these Republicans, this right-wing group, not all Republicans, every step of the way, but do it in the smartest way possible. If you're fighting them and then you end up in this shutdown, let me tell you something. If we ended up a shutdown 3 weeks from now, people would come to me and they'd say, they just cut off my Medicaid. They just got rid of my veterans benefits. Stop it. And I said, we can't.
Now, see, this is where I have the problem. You see how he over here. You see how he over here making up lies. You see how he over here making up lies, talking about they're gonna cut off Medicare. They're gonna cut off veterans aid. That's the crazy part about it. You see the over exaggeration of it. Continue.
We're in a shutdown. And then they'd say to me, why did you let the shutdown happen?
Yeah.
So a lot of people responded to the anguish. I appreciate it. I am I wake up 3 in the morning sometimes, so worried about the future of the country under these oligarchs or klepto, whatever, or, you know, oligarchs, I guess.
Yes.
And but you've got to find. We are fighting them tooth and nail in every way we can, but you got to fight them smart. And if you led yourself into a shutdown, which they, by the way, Musk, Doge, Vote, they want a shutdown. They said they wanted a shutdown.
Well,
and they thought we'd play into their hands. This guy Vote, who's head of the Office of Management Budget, has a whole list of what he wants to cut.
Nah, what I don't necessarily believe that the Republicans told him that he wanted the government to shut down. I believe they told him that simply because they knew his ass was not going to sit there and have the balls to go through with it. So they egged him into, so they basically baited him into voting for the spending bill because they knew he was not going to have the balls to go through with a government shutdown. That's why I believe that's why I think they told him that. Because it's kind of like this. It's kind of like me coming to you and saying, hey, if you don't get on board with this, then this is going to happen. That's kind of what they did to him. And the reason why they did that, the reason why I believe they did that is because they knew he was not going to go through with a government shutdown. They knew that he was going to, okay, let's vote for this spending bill. So, yeah. So I believe that 9 times out of 10, they did that in order to bait him in so he can vote for that spending bill.
And the Republican dream, not the Republican Republican dream, the MAGA right-wing Republican dream of decimating the government. You know why they do it? They want tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans.
right.
They want to destroy government, give all the money to the wealthy, and get rid of any regulations that they might have. So I felt an obligation to stop.
But if you're right, if what you're saying is true, how do you explain the fact that Friday Trump publicly congratulated you for this decision? Well, that
Trump-
was, he's
And again, I know I keep pausing it, but these people talk about the rich and the wealthy all the time. When talk about the rich and the wealthy all the time, but don't say nothing about Kamala Harris blowing over $2.5 billion on her campaign. Y'all have the wealthiest donors on y'all side, and here it is, you talking about, oh, they only care about the rich. Again, these people are just, yeah. Let's keep going.
he said you did the right thing. He
Yes.
said your decision, quote unquote, took guts and courage. Was he trying to trick you?
Troll me.
His troll.
He was trolling
Yeah.
me. I know this guy.
It's so confusing, though.
Well,
People are reading that.
he's trying to confuse people. He always tries to confuse people. He tries to hide what he does. And by way, that's another. You know, we Democrats are fighting them very hard. And what are we fighting them on today? We have a Medicaid Day of Action. Hakeem and I have set this up for the Senate and House, and we have senators and congressmen going to all different parts of their states and districts talking about how bad the Medicaid cut would be and why give tax cuts to take that money away from people, average folks, and give it to the very wealthy. God almighty, these guys are rich enough. God bless them. They don't need more money, but he tries to hide all this. He tries to hide all this about talking about Greenland or changing the
Now, Trump did that because he knew that if you would have turned around and took a stance on that and did what you did, he knew you was going to get the backlash. He knew exactly what was going to happen. Soon as you got up there and said, you know what, I'm going to vote for the spending bill in order to avert a government shutdown. He knew exactly what type of backlash you was going to get for that. So I don't even think that he was trolling you, Chuck. But you seem to think, because you so Trump deranged, you seem to think that he was trolling you. The board was probably congratulating you because 9 times out of 10, anybody who sides with Trump is a Nazi supporter, a racist, and hates American people. Pretty much. So that's why he congratulated you, Chuck. You so doggone Trump deranged that you can't even turn around and see it. So
name to the Gulf of America. This is another way of him trolling.
Distracting.
Distracting.
Yes.
Senator, I want to ask you because I actually do agree with your decision to keep government open. I think no one wins. It costs the economy billions of dollars. Federal workers are left in the lurch in a shutdown. But I'm a Republican. I'm not really your core constituency.
They're a very I have a lot of relatives who are Republicans.
There are many nice ones. But some of the progressive members of your caucus are not the House caucus are not with you. Jasmine Crockett questioned your leadership. Hakeem Jeffries dodged a question about
In the governors, we have a great bench. But as for the Senate caucus, of which I'm the leader, I should be the leader. And let me just say this. One of the things I am known to be very good at is how to win Senate seats. In other words, I'm a strategist in terms of recruiting candidates, helping the candidates run campaigns and winning. Look, winning in 2026 in the House and Senate, which could stop Trump once and for all, is vitally important. Okay, so I did this in 2005, but just recently in 2020, everyone said they'll never get the Senate. And we pulled off something that many people regarded as a huge surprise. We won the 2 seats in Georgia. We got John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, the first African-American ever elected in Georgia in 100 years or a long period of time. And so I am good at that. But second, I'm sort of the orchestra leader, and I have a lot of talent in that orchestra. So what I do is I show them off. We have some great spokespeople, people like Chris Murphy and Brian Schatz.
Right.
We have, Democrats are learning to do the digital social media much better than we did before. I put Cory Booker and Tina Smith in charge. And then we have Bernie going out to Republican areas and doing rallies. And rallying. So we have a load of talent in our caucus. And I'll tell you one thing, we are totally united in one thing, many things, but one thing above all, and showing the American people that he is making the middle class pay for the tax cuts on the rich.
Right.
Today, we're doing it on Medicaid. We're going to do it very soon on the tariffs. He wants to put these tariffs in. It's going to raise you folks, the average family, $22,000 a year for these tariffs. Why is he doing that? Something so stupid.
Why?
He wants to use that money for tax cuts for the billionaires. The Republican Party is a different kettle of fish than it used to be. And that's why we're fighting them so hard. They are controlled by a small group of wealthy, greedy people. And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, the land and water that I own, or my employees. They hate government. Government's a barrier to people, a barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it, and we're united.
Another thing that we can actually react to. So before we even get started, let me give you guys an update and a little bit of background. So the whole situation with Trump and this one particular judge, I forgot his name, but what happened was they had five gang members of no, you had members of the Trende Araga gang that was deported over to El Salvador. This particular judge ordered at the last minute for that airplane to be turned back around and taken back to you're gonna have to make sacrifices. You just have to make sacrifices. You just gotta can't do what they trying to do. So, but for those of y'all who heard exactly what I was said, let's look into it. Tunde Araga. And so that is what pretty much happened. That is pretty much the thing that is happening in this situation. Let's go to the next one, where they're actually talking and not just playing music. Yeah,
Joining me now, Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, Carrie Urban, Fox News legal editor. Thanks to both of you. Carrie, give me a whack at this thing. Are more going to be able to be deported despite this judge, or what? What's your thinking here?
Larry, I love your riff.
Thank you.
Everyone's asking, what authority does the president have? And the real question that people should be asking is, what authority does the judge have to interfere in the president's execution of foreign policy? There was a filing over the weekend that I think most people missed, and it was from a career official at the State Department who's been working with Venezuela and El Salvador.
that is absolutely the question that everybody should be asking. What power do the judge have to basically avert the president? That's what the real. That she's absolutely right in asking that question and saying that that's the real question. What power do the judge have to avert executive orders from the president on foreign policies?
Since the early 1970s. So he's an expert. He's not a political appointee. He's a longtime State Department guy. And he made the argument that the Trump administration should be allowed to deport the Venezuelans in this way, remove them via this plane, because it was the culmination of weeks of negotiation between Secretary Rubio and other officials with the governments of Venezuela and El Salvador. And he said, if this judge is able to sweep all of that off the table, why would foreign leaders in general be able to trust and believe the Trump administration when they're negotiating and making, assurances of things? They're not going to be able to. So it's going to impact the president's ability to conduct matters of foreign policy overall, not just with respect to this situation.
So just to follow up quickly, that foreign countries should be discussing foreign policy with either this federal judge or any federal judge. The president's not important, right?
Well, that's exactly right. What's the point of having elections if judges are just going to come in and say, we're going to take over Article 2 powers and make decisions pertaining to immigration, national security, and foreign policy? That is not the role of the judicial branch. And so I'm hoping, Larry, that this spurs on the Supreme Court to get involved in one of these presidential power cases, because this just can't go on. Again, it really usurps the democratic process, and it's going to make it impossible for President Trump, who was elected by the people, to get anything on his agenda done.
So, Greg Jarrett, you can, have a shot at what Carrie's saying. I think it's eminently sensible. Yeah, I mean, she's got to be right. But what about this other business? This is from this wonderful New York Sun article, actually editorial. I'm going to guess it was written by Seth Lipsky, who writes almost all their editorials. This burden of proof and standard of proof. In matters involving immigration benefits, the applicant always has the burden of proof. The applicant has the burden of proof that he or she is eligible to receive the immigration, which goes to what Secretary of State Rubio said. You know what? You lied to us. You're out. It's that simple. I love that, by the way.
That's correct. Look, the Supreme Court has already considered the Alien Enemies Act. They did it in 1948 when Harry Truman invoked it, not in a time of war, but after World War II, all the way through from 1945 to 1951. The Supreme Court, Ludke versus Watkins, seminal case, said some very important things. They said, first of all, it's a completely constitutional law. Second of all, they said, this is the law of the land and it must be followed. And finally, even more importantly, they said, judges have no business being involved in second-guessing a presidential decision based on the Alien Enemies Act. And so Judge Bozeman is duty-bound to follow Supreme Court precedent, and yet he appears to have ignored it. Several things.
Are you looking to protect your family from power outages, but don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars? That's why we created Base Power. With Base,
Several things about his ruling over the weekend, issuing a temporary restraining order, are so troubling to me. First of all, he issued the ruling without hearing from the government, not allowing them to respond. Second of all, the plaintiffs, the members of this gang, 5 of them, are down in Texas. A Washington, D.C. judge doesn't have jurisdiction over them.
And what kind of standing would they have anyway?
No, they really
Seriously?
wouldn't. They wouldn't, because
they're in jail. Is that right?
Their exclusive remedy under the act is a habeas corpus petition. That's all. Not a temporary restraining order. Yet Bozeman issued a TRO.
Wow. Carrie Urban, can I go to the bigger picture here? And that is more restraining orders, more national injunctions, if you will, have been issued in the past month and during Joe Biden's entire first term. How can judges in one district say this is the law or this is not the law, or the president is enjoined? The president, correct me if I'm wrong, the president was elected by all the voters in the country. These judges, first of all, were not elected by anybody, but second of all, they don't represent the country. So I don't understand that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to use some common sense here. And I'll bet you a lot of people out there using the same common sense.
I think that's right. I don't think you need to be a lawyer to look at the use of nationwide injunctions and say, okay, we have a problem here. If you look at the 20th century, only 27 nationwide injunctions were issued over the entire century. That's over 100 years. In the first Trump presidency, there were somewhere between 55 and 64 just against him, which was far beyond any of the administrations before him. And then, of course, you just talked about the numbers that we're dealing with right now. But yes, Larry, your point is a great one. We have a real separation of powers issue here. We have Article 2, we have Article 3 for a reason. And, another thing that I keep hearing people say is, why do they have to, invoke this old law? Well, first of all, the Constitution, as Tom Homan pointed out, is even older than this particular act. But secondly, when you talk about the unprecedented, or the rare nature, rather, of invoking this, it's not unprecedented, but it's rare. Well, let's talk about why we're here. Tren de Aragua wasn't even an issue when I was at DOJ. When you and I were in the Trump administration, MS-13 was, but Tren de Aragua was not. You know when it became an issue? In 21 and 22. What does that correspond to? When Joe Biden opened the borders to terrorists, to gang members and to criminals. And we can look at the data, it's there. So what the Trump administration is trying to do now is fix a really serious problem by invoking a law on the books. And by the way, they said over the weekend that if they don't get help from the appeals court on this, they're going to go forward using other authority that's not this act. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
Interesting. Greg, last point here. Some of these district judges have prevented Elon Musk, Trump executive orders. They've prevented not just a freeze on funding, a temporary freeze on funding, but that whole funding process. I just want to raise this because it's an economic point, it's an important point. That funding freeze is to then generate a review, not necessarily budget cuts, but merely a review. Now, how can some federal judge, some district in this country stop the president of the United States from reviewing the machinations of his own government?
They can't. It's, the president under Article 2 has vested power to run and direct the executive branch. He can hire and fire. He can make cuts. He can pull back expenditures. That is his complete and utter discretion. What you have here are too many people, Democrats and other left-leaning organizations, who are engaging in forum shopping. They're running and sprinting to the nearest favorable judge in a preferable jurisdiction, regardless of whether that judge has any authority whatsoever. And they're getting favorable decisions. People seem to think, well, that's the final word. No, it's not. I guarantee you that most of these decisions by the favorable judge are going to get overturned on appeal. Some of them, I hope, go to the United States Supreme Court to finally settle the issue. But there's too many judges who are making decisions not based on the law, but on their political opinions and their personal animus against Donald Trump.
Coincidentally, I don't know, probably 95% of them are appointed by Obama and Biden. I'm just going to guess.
Well, a substantial number of them have been because it was forum shopping by the litigants.
Okay, I'll hedge. Substantial number.
Yeah.
Can't help you with that. So yeah, that's everything, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.